Good evening. It is 7 o'clock, and this is the regularly scheduled meeting of the governing body of the City of Spring Hill. It is Thursday, May 13th. Our first order of business, as always, is our invocation. Those of you who wish to do so, please stand and join us in prayer. I have asked Councilmember Owen to lead us in prayer tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gifts of life and the opportunities you give us to serve you and to serve others. Help us to act with character and conviction. We ask that your wisdom and grace will guide us. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please continue standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Leighton?
Here.
Mr. Leighton is joining us by telephone. Mr. Owen?
Here.
Mr. Graves?
Here.
Mr. Eckert? Mayor, we do have a quorum present.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the appointment of a city council member. The composition of the governing body is generally decided by the electorate. In those rare instances where a vacancy occurs, that duty falls to the mayor with the advice and consent of the council to appoint a member that we collectively believe to be in the best interest of the citizenry. We have not generally enjoyed a tremendous amount of diversity in the applicant pool in those few instances in the past where appointments had to be made. That was not the case this time, with the city receiving applications from three incredibly strong candidates representing very diverse backgrounds. Those three candidates collectively have experience in areas such as finance, planning, accounting, customer service, civic involvement, leadership, and management. The candidate that I have selected has been involved in our community in multiple ways, including 9 years as a business leader and owner, 7 years of active engagement with the Chamber of Commerce and later the Chamber's Young Professionals Group, hosting clinics for youth at her businesses, serving as one of the city's 2 representatives on the Spring Hill Recreation Commission for the past almost 3 years, and has been a resident since 2016. Lastly, in a city comprised of 52.7% women, she will add both voice and perspective of a population presently underrepresented on this council. Already a role model for her 2 young daughters, it is my recommendation to add council member to the other hats she wears, and it is my privilege to nominate Diana Roth to fill the position of council member for a term ending 2024. Would entertain a motion.
Start a motion to approve Diana Roth as council member for this term, remaining term.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 2-1. Madam Clerk, first, if I could invite Diana Roth up to the front. If you could administer the oath of office, and if we have someone who, there she is. She's going that way to take the picture.
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Kansas. And the Constitution of the State of Kansas. And faithfully discharge. The duties of City Council Member. For Spring Hill, Kansas. So help me God.
Ladies and gentlemen, Council Member Diana Roth.
Seat next to Tom. Oh. Sorry, Mr. Graves.
Diana, the rest of us are going to take the night off, so if you'd just go ahead and handle the meeting. Congratulations. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0-0. Next item on the agenda is citizen participation. This is an opportunity in the meeting for citizens to address the council on items not already on the agenda. Anyone wishing to do so, we just ask that you step up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have the council's attention. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the meeting and move on to the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0-0. We have two other appointments to make tonight, and I'm very excited about both of those and hope that the council will be as well. First is the appointment of a Public Works Director, and I've asked Mr. Hendershot to introduce that for us.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council. Tonight, I'm here to make a recommendation to the mayor and then on to the council for the hiring of Jackie Messer as Public Works Director. Jackie comes to Spring Hill from Lynn County, where he served as Public Works Administrator for nearly 5 years. In that time in Lynn County, he oversaw 13 departments, 55 employees, and 14 supervisors. Some of those departments included road shops, asphalt, solid waste, building maintenance, transportation, noxious weeds, and parks. Prior to Lynn County, Mr. Messer was a facility manager for the National Park Service. He worked in several locations, some of which include Fort Scott National Historic Site, Glen Canyon National Recreation Area in Utah, and Mount Rainier National Park in Washington State. Under that job title, he was responsible for all maintenance operations, including repairs, budgets, project planning and execution, contracts, employee development, and purchasing. He also served as the National Emergency Safety Officer for the National Park Service. This placed him as being responsible for all safety operations for items or incidents such as oil spills, hurricanes, special events, and searches. And oftentimes, these operations range from 30 to 500 personnel. Jackie also comes to us with extensive experience in water and wastewater systems. He's worked in treatment plants up to 52 million gallons a day, and he's certified in water treatment in 6 states. He has extensive experience in all types of maintenance, carpentry, electrical, landscaping, grounds management, etc. Mayor Ellis, after interviewing several candidates over the past months, I'm recommending the appointment of Jackie Messer to the position of Spring Hill Public Works Director with a starting employment date of June 3rd, 2021. The salary is at the 30th percentile of the range. This hiring does include forwarding of 40 hours of vacation time and also does include a $4,000 relocation expense, as he is required to live within a 30-minute drive of Spring Hill. Mr. Messer is here, Mayor, and if you have any questions, I am here for you.
I had the opportunity to spend some time with Mr. Messer, and I was impressed with the depth and breadth of his experience. We also talked about the employment of creative solutions, particularly in times of financial contraction. And I was very impressed with some of the ideas that he brought forward. And I believe that he'll bring that same creativity to the city of Spring Hill. Plus, he brings a professional maturity to an organization that is always in need of support and creativity. The men and women in our Public Works Department deserve fine leadership. And I believe that we deliver that with Mr. Messer. So it is my recommendation to appoint him to the position of Director of Public Works.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we appoint Mr. Messer to the Public Works Director.
Under the terms and conditions.
Under the
by the
terms and
city
conditions.
administrator. Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0-0. Mr. Messer, would you mind introducing yourself to your new employers?
Yeah, as stated, I'm Jackie Messer from Lynn County right now. I appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Welcome. We look forward to seeing you the first week of June.
Thank you.
All right, congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the appointment of a prosecuting attorney. We had, Ms. Garrity, 9 applicants? 10 applicants. And Ms. Garrity, in her role as Director of Community Services, Municipal Court rolls up to her, as well as Mona Keisha Jones, our Human Resources Manager, and I interviewed all 10 of those applicants. Given the quality of applicants that we had for City Council, the quality of applicants that we had for Public Works Director, and the quality of applicants that we've seen for Prosecuting Attorney, I think speaks volumes as to the reputation that the City of Spring Hill has outside of our corporate boundaries. This was an incredibly difficult decision and highly competitive. The tipping point for me is that the candidate that I am recommending for appointment has served as our acting city prosecutor since September. The feedback that I have received from attorneys as well as from a handful of litigants is that they feel that they were treated fairly, they feel that it is balanced, and that they feel that they were treated respectfully. Also, the answers that the candidate gave with regard to what measure of success we look for in a prosecutor did not deal with convictions, instead dealt with finding the truth. With that, it is my privilege to nominate and for your consideration recommend the appointment of Andrew Bolton to be the prosecutor of the City of Spring Hill.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we appoint Andrew Bolton to the prosecuting attorney.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Leeton?
Aye.
Motion carries 400. Next item is consideration of approval under CBDG grants for sewer rehabilitation. Mr. Miller, is he joining us? There he is. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, I come before you this evening to consider approval of a final payment and change order number 2 for the 2020 CDBG sewer rehabilitation project. That project was constructed by Utility Solutions LLC. Construction on the project was completed in April. Final scope of work included approximately 2,200 feet of 8-inch CIPP or cured-in-place pipe rehabilitation, 6-point repairs, almost to 700 feet of pipe replacement, and 111 vertical feet of manhole lining. The project area is in the CDBG area of Spring Hill, of course, generally to the north and west of the intersection of South Street and Webster Street. The final application for payment, related closeout documentation, and change order number 2 are in accordance with the terms of the construction contract and have been reviewed by the city attorney. The final contract price is reduced by approximately $20,000, $19,975 with change order 2 when adjusting to actual as constructed quantities. As you've heard me state before, the city is seeking reimbursement through Johnson County CDBG funding in the amount of about $154,000 of this. The remaining big portion will be funded by the city's wastewater fund in the amount of $97,000, which has adequate funds for this purpose. Staff recommends the governing body authorize Mayor Ellis and the city staff to execute change order 2 and make final payment to Utility Solutions LLC in the amount of $12,551.45. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Mr. Miller, just for educational purposes for those that may be unfamiliar with this project, could you give a high-level description of why this is so important, in particular to our wastewater treatment plant?
The area in question has long had a high, that's very old sewers, has a high level of infiltration and inflow, particularly during wet weather events. That I&I causes stress on the wastewater treatment plant and adds to the overflow from other I&I areas in the city. That overflow has to go into the peak flow lagoons and then be processed back into the plant for treatment at a later date. So it's critically important to minimize I&I into that plant. We do spend a considerable amount of money and effort to treat our wastewater in Spring Hill, and that adds to the cost.
And to simplify it, we're treating rainwater.
Correct.
When that happens. So this project helps us to mitigate that. And what year are we in this project, Mr. Hendershot? This has been a successful CDBG project for years.
I believe, Mayor, this is the final year that we'll be participating. I believe this wraps up the project, is that correct?
This does complete the sanitary sewer I&I in the CDBG area. Yes, we are looking at other alternatives in that area for future CDBG funding opportunities.
Terrific. CDBG funding has also been utilized for handicapped accessibility in this building as well as this project. So we appreciate the partnership we have with Johnson County in this program.
I
All right.
think, Mayor, you were asking how long? I think we've been doing it since 2005 or 6.
Oh, even longer than I thought. Okay, I was thinking 9 years, so
Well, it went back to when Mayor Squire was on.
terrific. So it has been a very successful project. Mr. Miller, thank you for helping us to bring this project to conclusion. Would entertain a motion to approve final payment of change order number 2 in the amount stated.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to authorize the mayor and city staff to execute change order number 2, make final payment to Utility Solutions LLC in the amount of $12,551.45.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 400. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Don't go very far. Next item is consideration of Resolution 2021R-08. This is the 5-year Johnson County Assistance Road System CARS program for 2022 through 26. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council is aware, each year the Johnson County CARS program administrators request a 5-year CARS program forecast from each city in the county. This year, that'll be the years 2022 through 2026. In order to have projects considered for that program, the governing body must submit its written 5-year program requested by April 2021, which was done. And then all requests must be accompanied at a little bit of a later date, in this case tonight, by a resolution which provides that the included projects have been reviewed and approved by the governing body. The CARS projects that we submitted this year, just a little quick primer, does not obligate the city to any of the projects, but acts as a planning tool for the county in their budgeting process and assists the county staff in demonstrating to the Board of County Commissioners that the need is out there. The first year of each CARS program submittal, I call the real year. That is the year for which the county will select and budget projects, so that'll be 2022. We did submit 2 projects for 2022. One of them is 199th Street from west city limits to US 169 highway. That's a major maintenance project, which actually is being administered and managed by Johnson County. We're participating just because part of that project is within the city limits of Spring Hill. The city already has an interlocal agreement with Johnson County for that project. And it's essentially some roadway improvements, shouldering, safety improvements along 199th Street to the west. The second project is the city's #1 priority in verse 4, 2022. That is Webster and 199th Street improvements, including additional northbound turn lane and a traffic signal at that location, along with some pavement improvements. It's considered a system management project. You've approved the task order for our design of that work, and we have design underway on that at this time. Due to CARS requirements, we aren't able to actually put that out to bid until after the year, the first of the year, and between now and then, we'll actually receive an interlocal agreement from CARS once they've gone through the approval process, provided that project is approved. The 2023 project is 199th Street from Ridgeview to Renner. That is, again, these are planning projects that would improve 199th Street in that mile east of the roundabout, which is shortly to go under construction, to an improved 2-lane facility with wide shoulders, curbs, storm drainage, very similar to what you see on 199th Street currently that the county constructed west of Renner. It is essentially partially a roadway which can be expandable in the future should traffic conditions dictate. The project the next year would be 207th Street from Webster to Woodland. That's a major maintenance job, essentially would be a heavy mill and overlay project. Similarly, 207th Street in the following year from Woodland to Ridgeview would continue that heavy maintenance mill and overlay over all the way to Ridgeview. And the last project would be 191st Street from Highway 169 to Woodland Road. That project essentially to the railroad tracks. That area, about a half mile of that roadway is in pretty poor condition. There's an awful lot of development going on up there in that Cummins tract, a lot of heavy development. There's, a matter of fact, going to be a cement and concrete plant there, and so we definitely need to improve the roadway system in that area. Details and cost estimates for all these projects are in your packet. The alternatives are to approve the resolution, deny it, or table for consideration. City attorney typically reviews all of the CAR's information and resolution. With that, staff recommends approval of the CAR's resolution acknowledging review and acceptance of the requested 5-year Johnson County Assistance Road System Program for 2022 through 2026. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Would entertain a motion.
What's the resolution number?
8.
Move to approve resolution number 2021-R-08.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? The only thing I'd like to, this is another county-city partnership that I think has worked very well for residents all across Johnson County. Mr. Hendershot, one of the things that I'd like to do, if in the next month, if we could maybe post a list of CARS projects and what the county's participation has been, say, over the last 5 years, I think that's valuable information for our residents so that they can see how all of us are contributing to road projects throughout the county. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
This takes us to consideration of ordinance 2021-01. This is a rezoning east of Webster Street, 217th from C2 to R1. Mr. Burton, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you. Resolution 2021-01. It's a rezoning Z08-2021. This was rezoning was a continuation from the April 22nd meeting where there was some questions about the RV trailer that was parked on the property. We since have had that moved. Ms. Palmer was very cooperative on it. It is 0.6 acres of property, is right now zone C2. It is does back up to residential and then commercial on the west side. After the April 1st meeting, the Planning Commission conducted the public hearing on the rezoning. Staff report, which is attached, clarified the questions for the Planning Commission. It was approved by the Planning Commission. The 14-day protest period has passed and staff, as well as the city and staff, have not received anything. It's been reviewed by, the ordinance has been reviewed by Mr. Jenkins. There's no funding impact and staff recommends approval of ordinance 2021-01 for the rezoning.
Would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we pass ordinance number 2021-01, the rezoning east of Webster and 217th Street to C1, from C2 to R1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, it's an ordinance. We'll vote by roll. It's a rezoning. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll of the governing body, please.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
Mr. Eckert?
Yes.
Mayor Ellis?
Yes. Ordinance carries 6-0-0. Next item, number 9, consideration of ordinance 2021-02. This is a petition for annexation to 1195 Woodland Road. Mr. Burton.
Thank you again. This is Mr. Hiller. He petitioned for annexation into the city. This property is already adjacent to city limits. For a little bit of geography of it, it's next to the co-op down on Woodland Road. It sits just to the north.
This is the yellow house.
Yes, that's correct. We've worked with the county in the past years on trying to keep the house maintained. It went through several owners at the time, and now Mr. Hiller has purchased it and has a lot of septic problems. It's 1.2 acres, plus or minus just a little bit. So he did approach staff to ask to tie into the sewer, which is right there in the street west of his house in Woodland. In order to tie into our sewer system and being adjacent to the city, that's requested that they be annexed in. He did agree to it and is contiguous. This would be ordinance number 2021-02. Mr. Jenkins has reviewed the ordinance and staff recommends adoption of the ordinance and the annexation.
Mr. Burton, you had indicated that there were problems with the current system on site.
That's correct.
Okay, and is the rezoning contingent upon tying into our sewer?
No, they already have a sewer permit.
Okay.
And they actually have dug some of it already.
Okay.
It was decided not to allow them to connect into the main till after tonight.
Okay, but we do believe that they're going to continue with that process.
Yes, they've already paid all our impact fees and all.
Very good, very
Yes.
good.
Are they hooking up to city water?
I believe they're on our water system.
They're
now,
already on
sir.
that.
I think that area is.
It is in our,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2021-01, zoning.
02.
02? 02, I looked at the wrong one. 02, petition for annexation.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, it's an ordinance. We'll vote by roll. Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll of the council, please.
Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
Mr. Eckert?
yes.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Ordinance carries 500. Always happy to welcome new residents to the city of Spring Hill. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Burton.
Thank you.
And lastly, consideration of acceptance of bids, mowing nuisance abatement services. Mr. Burton.
Thank you again. So we provided to you is the RFP that city staff had sent out. We released it in March. We typically like to have this on an April council meeting agenda. Just did not receive any interest. We did receive one bid. It's the same company that has taken care of the mowing and the nuisance abatements for several years for us. Freedom Lawn and Landscape, their bid for mowing is stated, trimming is stated, and nuisance abatement is stated. Legal department did go through the RFP and redline it and before it was sent out. And this would be, the impact on the budget is, what we do is, after we mow it, we send notice. Then if they do not pay their notice, then it does go on their tax roll. But it does impact the general fund until taxes are collected. And staff recommends accepting the bid from Freedom Lawn and Landscape LLC.
And what's the cost we had last year on this? Since it's the same company, correct?
That's correct. Well, overall cost, the city spent $4,252.
Okay.
What's that? What, do you recall what the hourly rate was on the last contract? It's 60 and 30 this year.
Yeah.
60 and 35 for trimming, 65 and 35 last year. Yeah, I have an invoice here.
Okay.
All right. going down.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. I believe that the reason is they thought there was gonna be some more competitive bids. and
Okay,
It's actually a little lower than last year.
okay.
Mayor, I move we accept the bid as stated.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Aye.
Mr. Leeton?
I said aye, didn't come through, I guess.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Motion carries 500.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 11, consideration of acceptance of contract KDHE grant for rubber mulch. Mr. Hendershot?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again. In previous years, we've had very good success with the KDHE grant for waste tire grant program. This year, we applied for funding at a 50% rate for rubber mulch for Friendship Park, which is the park right here adjacent to the north of City Hall. We received word on March 15th that that application had been approved. The purchase makes eligible the items that include the product made from Kansas waste tires, shipping expenses, supplies for color, binders, or coating, etc., to put the in-place playground surfacing. City of Spring Hill Parks Division will use the grant funding exclusively to mulch the playground area at Friendship Park, located adjacent to the Civic Center. Friendship Park currently has wood chip mulch that requires annual maintenance and replacement. Placement of the mulch from waste tires greatly reduces future expenses and man hours as compared to wood chip mulch. Past grants of this program have been utilized to place the rubber tire mulch in Veterans Park and City Park. The grant funding for this contract totals $9,945. This grant is a 50% matching grant. The city's share is available through the Special Parks Fund. It is staff's recommendation and request to authorize Mayor Ellis's signature on KDHE grant agreements for this grant funding. Any questions?
Yes. You talked about waste, and with the wood mulch, you revisit that every year.
Yes, sir.
Make sure it's up. What is the timeline, or what is the forecast on the waste according to this rubber type of?
It's very little waste. What gets spilled out onto the grass can be put back in. It just doesn't compact into the soil like the wood does, and it doesn't decompose. Probably the biggest issue we have with the rubber mulch is as kids use the same playground area, it kind of gets kicked out. But our Parks Department goes in there on a very routine basis with rakes and pushes it back underneath there. It also provides a great cushion, and is ADA accessible, or compliant, not accessible, but compliant.
Thank you.
And
Yes, sir.
always ends up in your shoes and at your house all over. I do have one question. How many other parks still have the wood chip mulch after this one, if we were to approve it? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, gosh. I'm only coming up with one over here on, and I forget the name of the park. Celia Dayton Park, maybe? Yeah, there may be one there. Not sure if the playground area at the aquatic center has this or not, so possibly two.
Okay. Great. Make a motion to approve the contract for KDHE grant for rubber mulch.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 500. And that concludes formal action, takes us to our one and only discussion item, 2022 budget. Mr. Hendershot, you have the floor.
And good evening again. We're here tonight to talk about the review of the 2022 operating budget. Let's see, we should be able to advance them here. Antoine, can you help me out there? Do you have any? This isn't wanting to help me out here. Yes. Well, this is embarrassing. There we go. Was that you or me? Okay. I'll cue you in on the next slide then, thank you. Just in review, for the 2022 budget, Phase 1 was in January through April where we, the staff level developed the planning. We're now in Phase 2 for development of that budget. From here, we'll advance to Phase 3 for the final review. And in Phase 4 is the adoption in July and August. There's an asterisk there because that date is subject to change depending on if the governing body decides by resolution to look at increasing over the neutral tax or neutral rate. And I'll get into that here in just a little bit. So that's why the asterisk beside that. Next slide, please. Just as, again, in review, the year one of our 2-year biennial budget, we approved the adoption for the 2021 budget, which we're currently operating under, and then a conditional use approval for the 2022 budget. We're now at the point then on year 2 where we can the budget can be revised to adjust for any revenue estimates as all the expenses were considered in the first year or last year in that 2-year process. Next, please. Purpose of tonight is we'll look at providing updated projections. We'll identify some unfunded 2022 budget requests, and we'll also discuss revenue neutral rate and the potential impact from that. And in future meetings, we'll determine if the city will follow the revenue neutral rate process. We'll also look in June at the 2022 to 2026 capital improvement program. We will receive our revised assessed valuation figures in on June 15th. So we'll be able to include those in there for a more accurate budget presentation. We'll also, in future meetings, look at the state budget document and the property taxes that are needed and mill levy impact. We'll also just very briefly talk tonight about the city's share of this American Rescue Plan Act. What I can tell you is that staff has been actively following this program. The U.S. Department of Treasury came out with their guidance just this week. Several of us at the staff level participated in some webinars, so there'll be much more information coming on in future meetings about those funds and what are eligible expenses to use those for. And there's a wide variety of eligible expenses. The thing to remember here is once our share of the American Rescue Plan Act, once those funds are received, there is absolutely no rush to use them. You have 3 years to use these funds. So the experts that I've been dealing with are all saying, take your time, develop a plan that best fits the needs of your residents and the needs of the city. So that's, at this point, that's about all I have for that. We'll continue to follow that. The Treasury Department's guidance is a living, breathing, and ever-changing document, much like CARES, but it is a much easier process, for lack of a better term, than CARES. This money comes directly to the city and does not funnel through the counties. Next slide, please. So we'll focus here on the general fund for the 2022 conditional budget that was approved. And I'm going to have to put my glasses on here. That conditional budget approval included a beginning fund balance of $750,000. We're projecting revenue for 2022 that does not include property taxes at a little over $3.5 million for a total of $4.2 million roughly. Then we anticipate property tax dollars at the current level tax rate to be collected at $2.7 million. Makes a base revenue budget for revenues at $6,980,000 and $980,010. Looking at expenditures, our personnel expenditures for 2022 are projected to be $4.6 million or almost $4.7. Commodities at $413,400, contractual a little over $900,000. Capital outlay, which does include the lease payments at $193,000, almost $194,000. Transfers of $22,000, and that is for the alcohol funds that are collected and transferred into special parks. And then the reserve funds of $750,000, which we budget in, and then we allow for them in the expenditures. So you can see that by these projections, our base expenditure budget is $1,000 less than the revenue. In 2022, or for the 2022 budget, next slide, please, I'm sorry. There were a few items that were unfilled requests. These requests included a K-9 police officer, police department K-9 officer, the redesign of the city's website, courtroom software and training for the judge, the prosecutor, and the clerk, and street department and vehicle equipment maintenance increase on their line items, for a total one-time purchase request for 2022 of $46,930. Next slide, please. Also included in our budget annually is some personnel issues to where we try to account for merit adjustments, retirements, payroll taxes, capers and KPF increases, health insurance adjustments. So the total for that personnel related is just a little over $200,000. Also for unfunded personnel related items were 3 new positions in the police department budget that were not funded for 2022. Next slide, please. Looking at potential adjustments to our beginning revenue, as we look at various things and make those projections, and bear in mind that these are projections. The original budget called for a $750,000 general fund balance to begin the year. 2021 sales and use tax budget was budgeted at $1,855,000, and that was based on a 2020 actual sales tax and use tax of $2,028,000. And I think the reduction in there was anticipated from COVID, et cetera. So the potential adjustments due to savings issues that we have implemented through the year include personnel savings due to open and unfilled positions in 2021 of approximately $300,000. An increase in sales and use tax revenues, we're projecting an increase of $175,000, or a potential adjustment to beginning revenues of $475,000. The 2022 budget is based on a potential decrease to property tax if assessed valuation is less than estimated, and I'll get into that here in just a minute. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk about this revenue neutral rate, or Senate Bill 13. The revenue neutral rate is the tax rate in mills that would generate the same property tax revenue in dollars as levied the previous tax year, using the current tax year's total assessed valuation. What that means is, by Senate Bill 13, unless a governmental entity takes specific action, then the revenues collected from property taxes for 2022 would be equal to what is collected in 2021. Okay? And I'll get into the impact of that here in just a little bit. The dollars levied in the current year would equal the dollars levied in the prior year. This gives no allowance given for new development or increased valuation on existing properties. Next slide, please. For this year, our actual assessed value was $105,217,741 assessed value throughout the city. With the 39.661 mill levy that was attached to this year's budget, you can see how that was divided up into the general fund, bond and interest payments, cemetery fund, and fire protection, and then the equivalent amounts per those mill levy breakdowns.
And again, Mr. Hendershot, I want to point out, and I want us to do a better job of pointing this out in presentations.
Okay.
That 12.387 fire protection mill does not apply citywide.
That's correct.
Those of us who live in the taxing district pay almost 17 mills. But our city portion is 39.661 minus the 12.387.
Yes.
I want all presentations to reflect that.
Will do, sir. Looking then on to the next slide, for the conditionally approved budget for 2022. This estimate of $115,530,000 is based on our estimate of a 10% increase in assessed value. So you can see then that at 2021, those numbers carried over from the previous slide. Then for 2022, utilizing that increase in assessed value would result in an increase in revenues of $311,094 with a level mill rate of 39.661. This is if we use the increased assessed values. You can see how each one of those figures is adjusted accordingly. Next slide, please. Without the public hearing process for the tax revenue neutral rate, then our revenues are frozen at this year's rate of $3,555,976 collected from property taxes. And the impact then on that in 2022, if that was to still be applied, that same dollar value, the mill levy, total mill levy actually decreases to 36.327, but there is no increase in revenues from property taxes. Next slide, please. This slide shows the potential impact of the revenue neutral rate. The gray section there represents the revenue neutral rate, while the blue would indicate the best estimates we can at this point going forward of where revenues from tax collection would be on properties without the tax revenue rate. You can see that our revenues remain steady through 2031. In each year, you would go through this process of determining whether or not you want to look at the public hearing process to be able to capture those increased assessed value funds. But you can see the difference in revenues over the next 10 years in this slide. Next slide, please. This slide then shows what we anticipate, how that revenue neutral rate would apply to our expenses. The gold line in the center then represents our best estimate for the next 10 years on where we think our expenses would be as compared to, you can see that it increases over the revenue neutral rate. And then if we are allowed to capture those revenues from increased valuation and growth, then the expenses or the revenues would be in excess of those anticipated expenses. Bear in mind that these are expenses. Mayor, I apologize. I need to find out if this is any anticipated growth in staff or not. I will find that out. That just came across to me.
Given the escalation, I would suspect it contemplates some growth.
I would expect, but I need to get clarification. I don't want to mislead anyone on that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the calendar going forward then to not exceed the revenue neutral rate would be nearly identical to what we're accustomed to doing now. On June 10th, there'll be a CIP review for the capital improvement program. On June 15th, we would receive those assessed value estimates from the county, and that allows us to really zero in on the budget numbers at that point. Then by August 4th, we need to publish that notice of budget hearing in the newspaper and have that hearing by August 15th. Then the governing body adopts the budget the 15th through the 25th. Then it's submitted to the county clerks. That is without exceeding the revenue neutral rate. If there is an action to look at exceeding the revenue neutral rate, then that calendar, adjusts. Next slide, please. That calendar would still have the CIP review on June 10th. We would still receive our assessed value estimates from the counties on June 15th. By July 20th, then, we would be required to notify the county clerks of the intent to levy above the revenue neutral rate. We would hold that hearing sometime between August 20th and September 20th. And then that governing body would pass that resolution to exceed the revenue neutral rate and formally adopt the budget sometime between August 20th and October 1st. And then that budget is then submitted to the county clerks. Next slide, please. It has been the practice of the governing body through the years to maintain a level mill levy. It is staff's recommendation that to adequately provide city services at the level expected by our residents, exceeding the revenue neutral rate is justified, and by that I mean justified for your consideration and to allow for some public input into that process. Such hearing would be held between August 20th and September 20th, with the budget hearing held by September 20th, followed by the certification.
Mr. Hendershot?
Yes.
In that webinar, if I remember right, I think they were somewhat recommending to have the public hearing anyway, were they not? As a safety in case you went over?
I think that's what he's advocating.
Yeah.
Yes,
is
yes.
Based upon what our
Right.
objectives were last year. we
Right.
should Probably have it, that would justify.
Even if we don't want to
having
use it,
even if
Right.
we can
don't.
back
Right.
down, yes.
And at that hearing, there's options that
Right.
can be looked at and
Yes.
considered.
Okay.
So with that in mind, Mayor, unless there's questions on the budget presentation this evening, and I and Ms. Armstrong are here to answer those questions, I would recommend, sir, that I bring back a resolution at the next meeting, which would then notify the county clerk that it is our intent to look at exceeding the revenue neutral rate. Not to say that we are, because that's obviously is your folks' decision there, but at least to give us that option, and we can bring that back on May 27th.
Well, I think that would be the most prudent course,
I believe so too.
so.
Yeah, because there is
consensus.
penalties if we go over it.
Right.
There's penalties for us, so
Right.
it's a problem.
So general consensus?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Well,
Mr. Hendershot, one more
Yes, sir.
thing, please. Mayor, if it's okay. How close were we on a detailed budget for 22? Do we
By
have
detailed-
something, line item budget for review?
I believe we're very near to having that prepared, Ms. Armstrong. Yes.
So we could have copies. I think that'd be a benefit to all of us to be able to look at that and so we could have some good discussion on what we want to do and how we want to do it and
Okay.
maybe even give us a little more insight.
we're gonna
into-
have to piecemeal this together. We're
Yeah.
gonna
I agree.
Put it back together based
Okay.
upon legislative action this year, so.
We'll get that distributed then
Perfect.
as soon as absolutely possible.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
I have a question, and it's more of a clarity issue. We're talking about maintaining the mill levy, right? That's
Yes.
what we're looking at. But then we also talked about a 10%, or projected 10% increase in valuations.
Yes.
Can you help me understand that?
Okay. The assessed value or appraised value is conducted by the county, and that is on all property within the city, and it does include any new construction, new development. So that's where we're getting this increase in appraised, which leads to the increase in assessed value, which is what the mill levy is applied to. We have that information from Johnson County. We will not have that from Miami County until June. However, Johnson County's was an estimate when we got it in March, so they're fine tuning that. So that's that increase there that we see every year is the increased value of properties that are currently, where you live, Mr. Record, where the mayor lives, and where many of our residents live, that increased value there, plus the increased value due to new construction. That's that increase that we're estimating to be approximately 10% for the 2022 collection process.
Keep in mind, it's not just increases either. There are flat and decreases
Yes,
as well.
yes.
So we've had years where we've had overall property tax decreases, you recall from the recession. But there are some properties that aren't necessarily increased.
Right,
The static mill levy has always been the objective, but understanding that even with that mill levy, the higher valuation equates to a higher tax
It
amount.
does.
So that's the objective has been to maintain the static mill levy and let growth, in particular, those new properties coming online, pay for itself. With a revenue neutral mandate from the legislature, we have to make some difficult decisions.
Very good.
Anything else?
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Hendershot.
Thank you.
This takes us to announcements and reports. It's difficult to believe that we are back at graduation time already. Baccalaureate is this weekend, and I'm absolutely delighted that our kids are going to be able to have a graduation at a time in proximity to the end of school. So my congratulations to each graduate and reminder to them that they owe their good and dedicated services to us. We're counting on them. Mr. Owen.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right, Mr. Leeton.
I'd just like to say, welcome to the new council member, Ms. Roth, and I hope she enjoys the time that she'll spend on council.
Thank you.
Well, and I think I said this when Mr. Owen and Mr. Graves were sworn in, welcome to the least powerful side of the room. All the power is on the other side. All right, Mr. Eckert.
Welcome, Ms. Roth, to the appointment.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we talked a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, about, and there was some confidentiality associated with it, but it was about the city laying some fiber in some different areas, and we were to get some information on that or some kind of scope.
Mr. Hendershot?
Yes, I was directed to bring that, I was directed to bring a project back for conduit, not fiber, for conduit.
Okay.
In May, and that's on my agenda for the next meeting.
It's on the 27th.
Okay,
All right,
very good. That is all, sir.
all right. Guess who's not last?
All right.
Mr. Graves.
Welcome, Ms. Roth, as well.
Thank
Excited to have you. And also welcome Mr. Messer. Excited to have you on as well. Look forward to working with you. So,
Absolutely. Ms. Roth, welcome. And
Thank
do
you.
you have any announcements or reports?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity, and I am very excited to serve the city of Spring Hill, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move to staff reports. Mr. Hendershot.
Thank you, Mayor.
You have some more good news for us today.
I do, Mayor. There was some major announcements today come out from the CDC and the state of Kansas. And out of Topeka, the following was issued today by Governor Kelly, who says Kansans who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 will no longer need to wear masks outdoors in crowds and in most indoor settings, effective immediately. Governor Kelly announced that today. A little more into that, the state will follow guidance announced Thursday by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which said people who are fully vaccinated could stop wearing masks and social distancing outdoors in crowds. Masks also will not be necessary in indoor spaces except for settings such as buses, planes, hospitals, prisons, and homeless shelters. So we will immediately get word out to our staff on that, and as well as share this news with the residents as well. But I think it shows the results of some very devoted and concentrated efforts by residents across the country, and the positive results of that as we try to return to normal. Other announcements that I have, Mayor, is I would like to introduce Kristen Boxman. Kristen, stand up, please. Kristen is our new public affairs specialist. She comes to us from the city of Wichita, has an extensive background in journalism and television news. And she started about 10 days ago. Our current public affairs specialist, Kate Schupert's last day will be tomorrow. So we've welcomed Kristen, and she has jumped in with both feet and is doing a great job.
Well, and I'd just like to interject two things. First of all, while we're absolutely excited to have Kristen with us, Kate has had to relocate due to a transfer for her husband. We were certainly sorry to lose her, and very much appreciative that she was able to work with Kristen as well. I've been able to spend a little bit of time with Kristen. She's got a lot of energy. I don't think we're going to see any gap in that office at all. So thank you very much, Kristen. We're glad to have you.
I'm also, Mayor, very pleased to announce that we've hired a code enforcement officer who will begin work on May 24th, as well as a police department administrative assistant who will begin work on May the 24th as well. And I have no other announcements, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
No report.
All right, Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you. I don't know how this works.
I'll tell you.
Thank you. The only thing that I have to announce is that we are full speed ahead on our pool opening. So by the next council meeting, we'll be very close. The Parks Department, I believe, has pool pulled, ready to go. And we are still in need of staff. I don't know if there's anyone listening that has staff. Perhaps Ms. Jones could let us know what we're looking for.
I imagine we're looking for lifeguards, grounds crew, probably everybody. If you're interested, apply. Yeah,
Yes.
and as a reminder, there are not upper limit age restrictions. I know we traditionally look at school-aged, college-aged, but if there are retirees who want to join the seasonal workforce, please give that consideration.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Chief Henson? Did somebody steal your thunder? I see Mr. Hendershot getting stopped about 4 times on his way home.
Yeah. So I have I have a couple things. First of all, this is National Police Week, and not to be too somber, but this evening at 7 p.m. Central Time, 264 names of officers who were killed or died in the line of duty, including Officer Mosier from Overland Park. Their names were added to the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial in Washington, D.C. But I want to take a moment to recognize the men and women of Spring Hill PD and thank them for their service and their commitment to this community. And I also want to thank our community for their support because it is very important. We're wearing our mourning badges today to honor those 264 officers who made the ultimate sacrifice to their community. But I just wanted to point that out. So, you know, it's important. So, yes, Mr. Hendershot took some of my announcement. We do have a new admin records person starting on May 24th. Her name is Sarah Newberger, and she comes from Baldwin City. She was the city clerk there, so she has some experience in dealing with records and things like that, so we're excited to have her. We also, Officer Rudy Rodriguez graduated from the academy on Tuesday. He was honored by his academy classmates and voted in to be the class spokesperson for the graduation, which is really, really neat. His first day in the training program started on Wednesday night, so he's on evenings and he'll be going to midnights. You know, we started him off in the best of schedules. Sam Tallman, he started the academy last week, and he's already doing well. He practically aced the law portion of the test, so, you know, maybe we'll get, you know, top of the class this time. I don't know. Today we tested 2 applicants for police officer, and we have interviews set for May 25th. We also have a conditional job offer for a police officer, and she should start midsummer and go to the academy in August. And this Saturday, we have Pops with Cops, barring the weather. So keep an eye on Facebook. If we have to cancel it, if it's bad weather, we'll postpone it for another day. But that's set from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the gas station there on the corner, and ice cream and festivities and things of that nature will take place tomorrow night. Or not tomorrow night, Saturday night. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Snavely?
Which gas station? The one there on
Spring Hill Oil.
It's Spring Hill Oil.
Oh.
All right, Mr. Burton?
No report, sir.
All right. Mr. Jenkins?
No report.
All right, Mr. Jenkins, I would request that you reach out to Ms. Roth and schedule a time to talk about and provide a high-level overview of both the Kansas Open Meetings Act and the Kansas Open Records Act. There are some nuances there that I think are important for every council member to know. And given that there isn't a new elected officials course for Ms. Roth to jump right into, I would appreciate it if the 2 of you would have a conversation. All right, thank you very much. The last item is consideration of an executive session. No formal action is anticipated, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I would request that we recess into executive session. I think 5 minutes will be sufficient. Probably take a 2-minute in between so that we can get there and get Mr. Leeton on the phone.
All righty. So we'll start it at 8:07. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we recess an executive session for 5 minutes to discuss potential litigation pursuits pursuant to attorney-client exception of KSA 75-4319B2 of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The opening meeting will resume at City Council chambers at 8:12 p.m. The persons to be in attendance are as follows: Jim Hendershot, City Administrator; Cindy Henson, Chief of Police; Frank Jenkins, City Attorney. And we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 500. We'll stand in recess until 8:07.
Go to the little boys' room.
Well, you guys started.
I better.
Mr. Leeton, I will call you on your cell phone.
Last time I tried it so many times.
Okay.
I know.
We are back in open session. The discussion was limited to the topic stated. No decisions were made, no votes were taken. Would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.